In this video segment, I'm going to be covering just a little bit about some of the game's overall concepts and mechanics, and a little bit about the game's visual interface. If you get to my site, you can find a link for that on the Kickstarter page. If you click on Game Tutorial, you'll be prompted to enter in a nickname for yourself, and then you'll get two options. The top one is an interactive text-driven tutorial. It's going to go into a little bit more detail than I go into here. You may want to check it out if at the end of this video you still have a couple questions. The bottom one is, it's a solitaire type game. You play against a computer opponent who doesn't fire back or draw cards or anything like that. It's basically a testing ground for card combos and strategies and whatnot. So this is what the interface should look like in every major up-to-date browser. It's a work in progress, but at this point it's certainly functional. You'll notice down here in the player hand section, this is the first hand drawn. Every turn you're going to draw 6 cards out of your draw deck, which you get an indication of over here. The total number of cards you have left in that. And moving right on along with these other values, this action panel, every turn you're going to get 2 actions to use. You can either shoot at your opponent with a volley, you can purchase a card with the purchase action, or you can play a card with a special type of contract. So for this card, for example, you can see in the lower right it has type contract, and this card over here, this has type equipment. Contract cards require an action to play, while equipment does not. Moving up to the ship status, this gives you an indication of where your shields and hull are, and as well as your opponent's. If you deplete your opponent's hull strength down to 0, that's one of 2 victory conditions for the game. So this is where you'll find out how close you are to that. This is the resource panel. You can see I've begun to add icons here. I plan on doing that for the rest of these words. Looks a little nicer with an icon. This cube here represents influence, and this Wi-Fi signal type thing is a transmission point. You'll get an indication of how many active ones you have, which I have 0 because I haven't played any cards yet. And finally, your offensive panel. This will tell you how many lasers you've loaded, how many torpedoes you have loaded after you play them, and then you click fire to use up a volley to shoot at your opponents. Lastly, right here, this collector tech upgrade. This is the other victory condition that does not involve shooting down your opponent. Basically, each one of these 5 levels has a influence cost and a transmission cost. So if I had 3 influence, which I do, I have 5 influence actually, and 2 transmission points, which I do not, I only have 1 in this hand, then I could purchase this first level of collector tech upgrade. And like I said, purchasing that last 5th level is what gets you the win. Alright, so now that we got that out of the way, we can actually play a little bit here. You'll notice in our hand we have 5 single influence cards. If we click on them, the border turns red, and then if we hit play, we play them. So you can see here in the status message window, we get an indication of that. We also have an indication over here that we have 5 points to spend. If you also look up here, you can see that each card that I can afford now has a green border, indicating that I can afford it. And as I mentioned earlier, with 2 actions, you get 2 purchases if you so choose. So I can split the 5 up, and actually that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to buy this modest Nanon Tariff that gives 2 influence, and I'm going to buy this Incinerate Waste card. And I'll kind of explain what that does right now. Whenever you trash a card, you can click on it, play it, and then each card gets a trash button on top of it. You're removing that card from your deck's rotation. So I just trashed a Gamma Nanon. Each starting deck gets 4 of those. Now there's only 3 in my deck, so I'm going to draw that card less often, which is good because it's only worth 1 transmission point. And if I picked up a Beta Nanon, it's worth 2 transmission points, and the Alpha is worth 3. So it's prudent to trash low denomination cards as soon as you're able to replace them with these higher denomination cards. Same goes with the money. So you want to draw less of the 1 influence cards and more 2 and 3 influence cards if possible. So what I'd like to do now is I'd like to actually show you how that first collector tech level is purchased. If we play 3 influence, that's what it costs, 3 influence. And we need 2 transmission points to afford the level. So the yellow border indicates it's available. Watch what happens when we play enough influence and transmission points to get it. The border turns green. That indicates we can afford it, just like the cards. So we click it, it turns red. It's kind of a confirmation step. Click it one more time, and you've purchased it. Awesome. Do that 4 more times, and win the game. Beat your opponent. Now let's go ahead. You can click play all influence. It's kind of a shortcut to play all your money. Let's go ahead and buy a laser so I can show you how attacking works. We'll buy 2 lasers. So we're just going to click through here and wait for those lasers to show up. There's one. So if we play it, the laser gets loaded as ammunition. See, we have 1 laser here. If we click fire, we use up one of our actions. We just lost an action to do 2 points of damage to the opponent's shields. Lasers do 2 points of damage to shields and 1 point of damage to hull, and the opposite is true of the torpedo. It does 1 damage to shields and 2 damage to hull. Early game you want to do lasers, mid to late game you want to switch to antimatter torpedoes. And that's the second victory condition. So that pretty much covers the basics. Recap, we went over what all these values on the right mean, what they indicate. We talked about how to purchase these upgrade levels and how getting to the 5th one gets you the win. We talked about how you play influence cards to be able to purchase and add these cards to your deck. We talked about how to purchase ammo, load ammo, and then shoot ammo. And all this is it's been a good crash course. If you have more information that you're looking for, you can find it probably in the more advanced tutorial that I showed you at the very beginning of this video segment. And that concludes this video segment. Enjoy the rest of the presentation.